Okay, I guess I just wait for people to show up. Hi. Hi, Olivia. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, there's a bunch of you guys now. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to give you a little bit of a preamble. So I'm going to read a chapter from this book. So this is The Suspect, which the episode that aired last night and is on Hulu today is this book. And so just so you guys realize, this was written in the mid-'80s, and that is reflected in how these characters are, how they behave. You have to know that when Cassandra and Carl go on a date, it's not with an app, it's through sending in a mail. Cassandra writes up a note that says what she's looking for, and that goes out to the newspaper, and then he responds via the newspaper, and she picks up a stack of letters and she has to go through them. And I don't know, man, I can't imagine what that would have been like. So these characters are existing in that time. And additionally, we're talking about a time where, we felt more comfortable kind of judging each other based on our weight and things like that. So that comes up a lot in this chapter. And I wanted to give you a heads up, because we wouldn't always engage in this way anymore. And Cassandra does talk about that stuff a lot. Hello, everybody. I am going to read you this chapter now. It'll take us about 10 minutes. And then the plan is that tomorrow, Fox and myself will post like a photo, and that's where we can chat about the book and about the episode itself, which I hope that, hi Dylan, which I hope that you guys you had a chance to watch. Okay. Are we ready, everybody? Are you all tucked in? It is story time. Okay. Chapter 7. I chose the date chapter because I didn't want to spoil anything, and a lot of this book is a why done it, not a who done it, so you kind of know who did it the whole time. So, chapter 7. If he had been the first of the men she'd met through her ad, he would have been a disappointment, but her standards had plummeted, or at least her expectations had. She was relieved that he was neither too young nor too old, and not ugly either. He wasn't what she would call extremely attractive, but at least he was tall enough and big, though not overweight. His taste in clothes wasn't anything to lift the spirits. He wore a suit which in Seasheld was unusual to the point of being extraordinary. A dark gray one with a plain white shirt and a maroon tie that was much too wide. Cassandra approached him, walking briskly, holding out her hand and grinning at him. He seemed astonished, possibly by the wideness of her smile, but rallied enough to smile back as he rose from the table to greet her. "The more nervous I am," she said to him, "the bigger I grin." "You must be Cassandra." He shook her hand, then pulled out a chair for her. "I'm Carl." "With a K," said Cassandra, sitting down. "With a K," he agreed. He had white gold hair, not a sign of a wave in it, and pale blue eyes, and his face was a collection of planes. She wondered if she would feel any physical attraction for him by the time the lunch was over. "You do have a Scandinavian look about you," she said. They were almost alone in the restaurant, which was a place with overgrown ferns hanging from the ceiling and a view over the water. The waitress approached, a petite young woman with a tumble of wavy auburn hair. "Hi, Cassandra," she said with a grin. "How's your life?" Her eyes skittered to Allberg. "Just fine, thank you, Rosie," said Cassandra briskly. "You two gonna have a drink? Maybe a bottle of wine?" "I was thinking more of coffee," said Cassandra, "and then maybe some food." "Oh, right. I'll go and get a couple of menus then." "Librarians," muttered Cassandra as Rosie turned away, "can't slink among the stacks smelling of gin." Allberg was observing with interest Rosie's progress across the room. "She's studying psychology," said Cassandra. Allberg looked at her. "I beg your pardon?" Rosie. She's a psychology major at UBC. Her parents own this place. She works here in summers. Ah, Rosie returned with menus. The clam chowder's good today, so I'm told. I'll have it, said Cassandra promptly, and coffee. Me too, said Allberg. He smiled at the waitress as he handed back the unopened menus, but at least this time he didn't goggle at her as she walked away. I hate this, said Cassandra with passion. Allberg leaned forward politely. What do you hate? Having lunch? Restaurants with ferns, or meeting strangers? Meeting strangers. She took a drink of iced water, wishing it were wine. I liked your ad, he said after a while. Why? What made you like it? It had a nice sunny sound to it. Rosie returned with 2 bowls of clam chowder and a basket of rolls and butter. Have a nice lunch, you two, she said sentimentally. Cassandra stared indignantly at her back. Allberg laughed. Hey, look, he said, relax. Enjoy yourself. You never have to see me again if you don't want to. Meanwhile, he waved his spoon at her. She's right. It's good. You can tell by the smell. He closed his eyes and leaned over the soup and sniffed blissfully. I'm sorry, said Cassandra, smiling. You're right. She began to eat. Tell me about yourself, he said. I'm a librarian, here in Seashelt. That's what I meant in the ad when I said, books are my work, my comfort, and my joy. She looked at him curiously. What did you think of that? I thought you were probably a librarian. He took a spoonful of soup. Cassandra laughed. I could have been a writer or a bookbinder. You could have been, but it seemed unlikely. What else? What else? Well, let me see. She broke open a roll and buttered half of it. Then she put the roll back on her plate and her hands in her lap and spoke rapidly. I'm 41 years old, financially secure, though not much more than that. Never been married, came here from Vancouver almost 9 years ago. God, I can't believe that. I've got a mother who lives in Golden Arms and a brother who lives in Edmonton. I go back to Vancouver once a week if I can to remind me that these villages up and down the coast are not all there is. She picked up her soup spoon and the buttered roll. Golden Arms. Oh, that's senior citizens' place. Yes, that's right. They live there on their own, but somebody's there to sort of watch over them. Now you. Tell me about you. Hi, Michelle. I'm a police officer. She looked at him blankly. A police officer? A cop? Are you a Mountie? Up here you must be a Mountie. RCM police, yeah. I hate cop. A policeman. RCMP. She chewed her roll thoughtfully. I use marijuana sometimes. Nothing else, though, not for a long time. I've had a few speeding tickets, too. Well, this is obviously not going to work out. She looked up to see him smiling. She hadn't heard a smile in his voice. The smile altered her entire impression of him. There might be some exuberance in there after all. What else, she said. I mean, there's got to be more to you than just being a policeman. Not much. Well, what do you like to do, said Cassandra patiently, when you're not on duty? I think I like having lunch with librarians, he said, or dinner. It was the first thing he'd said that sounded awkward. He pushed his bowl away. Do you mind if I smoke? She shook her head, and he lit a cigarette. I don't read much. I like to go to the movies sometimes. I like to travel. I like to sail. Are you separated or divorced or something? Divorced. She felt considerable relief. Why are you divorced? We get moved around a lot. My wife finally got tired of it. I don't blame her. We were in Kamloops before I came here. We'd been there 5 years. Then she'd started a little business, a boutique. She didn't want to give it up. Cassandra waited, but he didn't go on. Do you have any kids? 2. They're in university now, in Calgary. That's where their grandparents live, my ex-wife's parents. Cassandra looked out over the water. She wondered why his children hadn't wanted to go to university in Vancouver, where they could be near their father. Where'd you learn to sail? She said. On Lake Ontario. That's where I grew up. Toronto. What kind of a policeman are you? You don't give out traffic tickets and things like that, do you? No, he smiled again. This is my detachment. Seashell, I do whatever comes along. If this is your detachment, she said hesitatingly, then you must be involved in that awful thing, that poor old Mr. Burke. Yeah. The man who found the body, he's a friend of mine. George Wilcox? He comes to the library a lot. We've become friends. She felt an uneasy sense of caution. He was quite upset, I think. I'm sure he was. She finished her lunch in silence. He doesn't talk about his work, she thought. She wondered if this was because she was a stranger to him, or if he hadn't even talked about it with his wife. She'd read somewhere that a lot of cops, police officers, she corrected herself, were like that. Over coffee, they discussed the Sunshine Coast and Vancouver and sailing. Cassandra kept trying to imagine him brandishing a revolver and shouting, "Stop in the name of the law!" He looked a bit too old to be doing that sort of thing, actually. Maybe he just did administrative work and delegated all the other stuff. How many ads have you answered? She asked him. 2 or 3, maybe 4. She wanted to ask how successful those other meetings had been. Have you put in an ad of your own? She said instead. No. Are you going to? I don't think so. You'd get more replies than I have, said Cassandra glumly. There are hordes of women out there, just hordes of them. Yeah, said Alberg, but they all want to get married. Cassandra looked at him with interest. Oh, do they? She said casually. She glanced at her watch. Oh my God, I've got to get back to work. Me too, said Alberg. He put his cigarettes and lighter in his pocket and laid money on top of the bill. He got up and pulled back Cassandra's chair for her. Outside the restaurant, he walked her to her car. How long have you had this thing? He said, looking critically at the Hornet. All its life. 9 years. She put an affectionate hand on its hood. I'd like to see you again, he said. But I won't call if you've already made up your mind that you don't want to see me. Cassandra lowered her head to fish her sunglasses from her purse. Go ahead and call, she said carelessly. He opened the door for her. You ought to lock it, you know. I ought to exercise, too, and eat more salads. She climbed in and slammed the door. Thank you, said Alberg through the window. I enjoyed myself. Are you off duty? Said Cassandra. Is that why you're wearing that suit? If you don't mind my asking. I don't mind your asking. I'm going to a funeral, he said. I'll call you. She watched him drive away. She didn't know yet whether she liked him or not. She certainly didn't dislike him. She started the car. It wouldn't hurt to see him again, she thought, driving back to the library, even though she'd never been all that fond of blondes, and she'd certainly never imagined herself dating a cop, a police officer. And that is the end of the chapter. Chapter 7 is what I was reading, and that's it. I hope that was enjoyable for those of you who stayed for the entire chapter. I can stay on for just a second if anyone... chapter 7, that's correct. Thank you. Yes, now I'm just talking to people in the chat. Okay, so the plan is that I'll post this on my page, and then on my page, on my feed, and then tomorrow there will be a picture that goes up on Fox and my page, and we can have a chat about the book if you've read it, or the episode if you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu. You can watch it right now. Okay. If anyone has a question, I can answer it for like a couple minutes. If not, I'm gonna say, book or TV series. What is the book? Okay, this is the book. It's called Murder in a Small Town, by L.R. Wright. And it is also now a TV show for those of you who don't know, who just happened to pop onto this live and you have no idea what's going on. I haven't read all the books, but I'm going to read more of them. I didn't want to read the books and kind of get this character in my head from from reading the books. I wanted to make her up from what was on the page. When's the book reading? I guess this is the book reading. I haven't read other books for Audible except for these ones. I read the Cassandra parts of these books. So I would love to do more. My next Comic-Con, we have a Smallville one coming up in October in New Jersey. So you can always come to that. Yes, I talked to lots of people from Smallville. You can watch the TV show if you're in America on Hulu. If you're in Canada, I think it's on Stack TV streaming. And then it's also on Fox on Tuesdays and on Global in Canada. How often? I'm only going to read this. The plan right now, and we'll see how this goes, is that I read tonight. I'm going to read from this one. I have a nice juicy section with George to read next week. And then, if people like it, then we maybe can do other books, but we'll play it by ear. Okay. This is so weird. I feel weird talking to myself on this thing. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that you all have a wonderful night. Okay. Bye. Oh.